Hello again. You'll be pleased to realise that this is my last video and you won't have to listen to me sniff and cough and splutter all the way through another video after this one. So apologies for my bad delivery. I've got a very severe cold at the moment, which is making it very difficult to talk and breathe without sounding a bit ill. So thanks for your patience. So we said we would talk about, in this final video, foster care recruitment, retention and training strategy and so on. If we follow the thread from the first two videos where I proposed that you have a set of national minimum standards and they are then used to inform a set of policies and principles that you would want to follow in your fostering, you begin to develop a sense of what a foster carer in Indonesia needs to look like. Again, from the second video, if you were able to distinguish between the kind of different needs profiles of the children currently being looked after by the government, you will then also be beginning to formulate some sense of the volume of work that you have to do, which in turn suggests the number of foster carers you need. And as mentioned previously, this will vary from region to region. Some regions may struggle completely to come up with any meaningful amount of foster carers, and so that would need to be thought through. Again, the national minimum standards that we talked about in the first video could lay down the basic framework for selection of foster carers. So there are three strands to it. There is the recruitment strategy, the preparation strategy, and then the approval and retention strategy. So the recruitment strategy is best developed locally because people will be more mindful of the culture in specific areas of the country and how it may differ across the country. The assessment process, or rather the training process, I think would have to have some elements of basic understanding of human development and behaviour. That would be things like child development, attachment theory, safe care. I think I wouldn't go too far into some of the more sophisticated theories at this point in time. You would also want carers to be looking at or getting a greater understanding of what neglect and abuse looks like, and you should have some of those characteristics defined in law in your country. And we would expect foster carers and staff to be able to differentiate between the different forms of child abuse and neglect. Within the preparation training, whenever I do this with foster carers, I'm always mindful of how they present in the group, how they react to the material. Do they minimise it, for instance, or does it overwhelm them? And you should keep an eye out for both of those reactions, because none are particularly helpful personality traits in a foster carer. You would also want to try and explore what people's understanding is of what a foster carer might be in Indonesia, because they may have a very romantic view of lots of children being lovingly cared for and nurtured, and and actually many of the children we're talking about will find it very hard to receive care and nurture. And so you're looking to help carers develop a toolkit to aid their fostering activity and to understand that negative behaviour from a child is communication, and it's a communication of pain and distress that they are unable to say out loud, and so they can only show it in their behaviour. The actual data that should be collected on foster carers is quite important. As I mentioned earlier, children in foster care are looked after behind closed doors. That's an immensely powerful position for a foster carer to be in, and an immensely vulnerable position for a damaged child to be in. So I would be suggesting that all prospective foster carers have their criminal background checked. That does not mean if they have a criminal conviction that they can't be foster carers. That would be dependent on the nature of the conviction and how recent it was. If it was something that happened in their wild youth and nothing else had happened since, I would be inclined to carry on with the process, as long as it wasn't a crime of a violent or a sexual nature. You would be well advised to take up at least 3 personal references, preferably one of which is a current employer. If the applicants have any of their own children, I would suggest that they are spoken to alone, separate from their parents, and the children are given the opportunity to express how they feel about their mum and dad becoming foster carers, and express any fears that may create in them about sharing their family with other children. You would, at the end of the application process and then the preparation training, which preparation training ideally you would want to spend perhaps 4 working days on that, and you can split those days up however makes sense for you, but that would let you develop a reasonable programme to give prospective foster carers the knowledge and information they need to make an informed choice to proceed to full assessment. In the UK, the assessment form that is most typically used is developed by the British Association of Fostering and Adoption. I can make sure there is a link to that, and if you go to their website, the document you would be looking for would be what's called a Form F. I don't recommend you use that form because I think it is much more complex for your needs at this point in time, but you would do well to use that form as a menu to go through to decide, well, which of these elements do we consider are crucial and we want it to be part of our application process. In terms of other background checks, I would be saying if an applicant was in a previous relationship that had produced a child and the applicant was now separated from the other parent, I would say that the absent parent needs to be spoken to directly, and you should assure yourself that the reason the couple haven't separated was because there was some threat to the baby that they produced. I don't know how relevant that would be in Indonesia, but it's always something worth thinking about. The the kind of key points for me then thereafter would be, what type of fostering do people feel most comfortable offering? So for some that would be short term, others it will be long term, yet more it might be for permanence planning, it might be sibling groups, might be disabled children. It can be all manner of things, and people should be encouraged to have some investment in their own future and feel able to make some boundaries for themselves. And you may as well know what these boundaries are for the foster carers, because at least you can work with it then. If you don't give them the room to express any fears or anxieties, those fears and anxieties will just be shown in their behaviour at a later date, and you were not aware of the fears they may have had. So you want to be developing a very transparent assessment process. In terms of the numbers of children, I do think this is crucial. For instance, in the UK, the maximum number of children you can have in foster care is 3. You can go up to 4 with a special legal order, but it is unusual. And I would think 3 is the absolute max, really, given the level of need that you would be dealing with. I think you need to take into account the fallout rate of foster carers, and I think you have to make notes of why foster carers decide to stop, because that's information that will help you avoid any other mistakes, really. And lastly, the last point that I really can't discuss a great deal because it's such a complex issue, but you will need to give some thought to payment to foster carers. At the very minimum, they would need the expenses of caring for a child covered. But when we talked about those children who were very demanding, it's unlikely a foster carer looking after those kind of children would be able to do that and have a full-time job, for instance. In that case, that carer needs a different kind of package. And so you may wish to differentiate, you may wish to do something similar to the UK, which is where you have a lot of, the majority of foster carers work for local government, and then a significantly smaller amount work for agencies like myself, where they work with very damaged children who require a high level of care and attention, and so they have to be paid more because they can't have a full-time job and look after very demanding children. I think that's something that needs greater discussion. I'm conscious I may have gave a lot of information in three videos, but I was hoping more to create more questions in your head and give you answers, because in reality I can't know the answers to your questions because I've not been in conversation with anyone. In closing, all I would say is that I think it's eminently doable. I would be careful of time scales and don't overstretch your ambition. And that's pretty much enough from me. So hopefully in a few moments we'll have a conversation online. Okay, thank you and enjoy the rest of your conference. Bye.